we go through the home, you're going to see two very distinctive styles. The first over here to your left being the rootwood furniture. All of the rootwood furniture in the museum, Robert Tinker did make himself. He was very skilled, very talented artist, along with very great businessman. His first wife, Mary, she likes more elegant pieces. He likes that natural, simplistic look. So we have things like these two alabaster ewers designed and created in Italy, specifically for decorative purposes only. And as we travel through the home, you're going to see that combination of the elegant with the simplistic. As we go in, we're going to go into the first phase of construction. Please watch your step. There is a step up right here by the door. In here, we used to have the rocking chair. However, we moved the rocking chair back into the library. It was in the library, and then it was rocking way too often during regular daytime tours. You know, ladies, yes, not the paranormal tours, the regular daytime, like school group tours, old lady tours, where, you know, you got the Red Hat Society coming in, they're having a really good time. And then they go into the parlor, look into the library, rocking chairs going back and forth. They're not excited about that. Us tonight would be super great to see, right? Unfortunately, the Tinkers are not trained dogs. We cannot blow a whistle and make them do a trick. We can ask nicely. More times than not, they're like, I'm not feeling it, guys. Every now and then, something does happen. But we moved the rocking chair into this room, so that way it wouldn't rock nearly as much, and it didn't. For a long time, it just sat there. And then about a year and a half ago, we had a couple come in, and they got married in here, and they were taking photographs, and all of a sudden, there goes the rocking chair, back and forth, while they're in here trying to take their wedding photos. So they're like, turns out lots of their photos came back with tons of different orbs in them. They're really cool people, though. They were excited about it instead of upset about it, so that was great. But we have moved the rocking chair back into the library. I've been here for about 3 years now. I've not seen it move yet. That is my goal for this season. As long as there's people around. I have stipulations for them. And I want to be in here by myself to see it.
Mary was widowed once before by a man named John Manny. So if you hear her name's Mary Dor Manny Tinker. Pretty big mouthful. But her first husband died of tuberculosis. He was the inventor of the manual reaper, and that agricultural wonder pretty much allowed her to accumulate a lot of wealth. Well, her father ended up coming down to Rockford after she had married to be with the family after his wife had passed. And after that, so when he passed away, mourning clothes for Victorian women, it was very typical depending on who you're mourning. If it was a father or even a child, you know, you may be in mourning for about a year, and you're wearing first black, then dark purple, and then eventually start to fade into the blues, and then you're out. If it was a husband, it could be 3 to 5 years. You would be mourning him only if you have not accepted an offer of marriage by somebody else. If you ended up marrying somebody 6 weeks later, you're out of mourning and you're done. Men, however, it was just until you decided to remarry. If your wife died 2 weeks later, you're like, hey, you want to get married? She went, sure, great, you're done. No more mourning for you. Children were, yeah, exactly. Children were not kept in as fierce mourning clothes as their adult predecessors, and just literally just for financial reasons. Trying to do a whole new black wardrobe as kids grow is just kind of crazy. But here we do have her full gown. Yes, she was quite petite. This gown only has a 21-inch waist, and this is a crepe wooling dress, so it's not wool where wool can shrink and it can change out. But Mary was quite petite, and we also have a shawl as well as a bonnet, and then you do have a picture of her in the actual dress. With mourning traditions, as you look and see, we do have a mirror that's covered. You'll see many of the public spaces were covered of the mirrors because Victorians felt that spirits could get trapped inside mirrors. They're going to go towards the light and end up going into the reflection of the light in the mirror, and then you're stuck forever. And they don't want their loved ones to get stuck, nor do they want them sticking around. So they would drape over the mirrors. There's also the thought that you're supposed to be very modest and you're supposed to be in mourning, so you don't need to know what you look like. And that's vain to know what you look like. So covering the mirrors was a proper tradition. You would very often also drape over the portrait of that who passed. So we will see that in the formal parlor.
So as far as evidence goes in this room, I know there have been some EVPs, not a ton. One of the most common things that I've seen in here, you'll notice especially these shutters here. They have a lock that you actually have to swing over to lock and swing back to unlock. And then when you go to open them up, they actually fold into each other and fold into the wall. So it's really neat. And before, I used to have to come in here every day to open it up and close it up. It was just part of my job at the time. So some days I'd come in knowing full well that I closed these shutters the night before, and yet they'd be open, or one would be open and not the other. So I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. You guys want to do my job for me. I'm okay with that. But then I would open them up and come back for a 1 o'clock tour, a 3 o'clock tour. There is very few staff members here. We're not gonna go behind each other's backs to close them up or change things around, especially if you have a tour coming in. So, but there'd be times where I come in and sure enough, they're closed. Not only are they closed, but the lock has been swung up and locked. So you know, there's that.
In this room, as I said before, the door slamming is one of the things we've got. The other thing that people always experience is this really cold sense right about where you are, sir.
Yeah, I thought it was.
It's a vent.
I figured it out right away.
It's a vent. I had these two well-meaning 14-year-olds. This is why we also ask children to be accompanied. Mom bought them a paranormal tour for their birthday. They were twins. And they're, we're going to do this. We're adults enough, we can do this. I said, okay, but I told Mom, I said, just to let you, I need your phone number just in case anything happens, because we always ask for adults to be present. But they wanted to go on this by themselves, and okay, and they were clinging to each other the whole time. And it's the same tour I'm giving you guys, so hopefully it's not just clinging to each other. And then they came over here, and it was July, and the air kicked on, and you would have thought that, you know, Jack the Ripper had appeared right in front of them. They both screamed as loud as they could, and I was like, no, it's just, you were near the vent. No, we have to leave now. And they did. Mom had to come pick them up because they were so scared of the air conditioner.
Those servant stairwells, I'll tell you what. Earlier, what was it, last year, I think we had a silver exhibit. And being low guy on the totem pole at the time, I was the one recruited to go sit in the yellow room all day long polishing silver. Let me tell you how quickly I learned to wear headphones. Because the footsteps in this room or on the servant stairwell, it's a lot. It's very frequent that these things happen, and Steve's idea was, you know, they're kind of like kids. If you ignore them, they're going to keep doing it and get louder and louder and louder until you give them attention. So I thought, okay, great. So what I started doing was I talked to them nonstop. So that way, when I come in, they're like, oh, great, it's her again. So far, it's worked okay for me, I guess. I don't know. Maybe Tess can tell you different. I don't know how they feel about me chit-chatting with them all the time. They're probably like, oh, God, it's her again. But, you know, they... even still, with me talking to them, there was still constant noise coming from these rooms. Now, across the creek here, Mary did have a mansion. That 14-year courtship we were talking about, you know, where he builds his house across the creek from her. He's spending all sorts of time over here with her. Eventually, they sell off the land in the 1890s to the railroad company, who comes in, tears down a lot of her gardens, and puts in the Illinois Central Railroad. But in order to do that, they have to relocate the cemetery.
We just found out, I was talking about this guy last night, David Alling.
Okay.
Was actually hired to move all of them. He was the first carpenter here in Rockford. So he missed a couple because they never found Sarah Kent, who was Germanicus Kent's daughter, one of the first to be buried over here.
Right. Wow. And if they're missing one, they're probably missing more.
Yeah.
So we may or may not have more than just the Tinkers around on this side of the property. Across the creek in the gardens, we do have a Native American conical mound. It has been archaeologically tested, and it does date to approximately 1100 AD, and it is a Native American burial mound. So we do have that on our property as well. And across the creek here, I had a woman actually just this past summer come in and tell us a story that she used to have a really close friend. He worked on the railroad here, and this was back in the 80s, and all of a sudden he started telling her about this older gentleman he would see walking around the gardens here, and he'd wave to him every day, and this gentleman would just stare at him and not wave back, and he was kind of rude. He's like, well, what's up with that? Fine, whatever, I'm going to stop waving at you, crazy old guy. And so she's like, well, that's weird. And so she was doing some research on the Tinker family because she loved the museum. The museum's been open for about 40 years by this point. And so she goes down to the Rockford Public Library. She's digging through the archives, and she was able to get a copy of Robert Tinker's photo. So she brought it down to her friend, and her friend's like, how'd you get the guy's picture? You've been stalking him too? And she's like, this is the guy you see in the gardens? And he goes, yeah, I see him like every morning. And she's like, he's been dead for like 60 years. He's like, no, he's not dead. He's in the gardens. And she's like, well, he may be in the gardens, but he's definitely dead.